Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to Big Blend Radio. Very excited about our special guest on today's show, San Diego-based author Edgar Swamp, and he is joining us to talk about his new fantasy horror novel. It is called Amber Hollow, and it is out now, and it's based in Wisconsin, like a small town, and this is like a crazy book. I dig it. It's got fantasy, it's got horror, it's got like a detective thing going on. But it's one of those that are going to keep you guessing. So I encourage you to go get the book. It's out now, obviously Amazon, all those stores, but you can go to edgarswamp.com. But welcome to the show, Edgar. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Your book's a trip. You know, I'm serious, because even in the prologue at the beginning, it's already getting weird. It's, you know, and it's and I mean weird in a good way, because you're like, that doesn't make sense for a fire. And so what is going on here, you know? So can you explain, just give everybody a little overview so I don't ruin it and tell people too much about the beginning and the premise of the book?
Well, definitely. The idea was for there to be a major catastrophe practically overnight that decimated and killed an entire village. And so it's told kind of in a detective style narrative as a mystery, in which how the heck did all these people die? And there are 5 survivors of roughly 600 citizens, and they're all giving different stories, leading the investigators to believe that they're all trying to cover for someone. Well, they're all actually blaming someone, but he's amongst the dead. So the story can't check out. And so the idea behind the novel is that you're supposed to not ever know what's going on. And it's supposed to get weirder and weirder and weirder as it goes. So that's where the horror and fantasy elements come into play.
Man, now, do you read Stephen King and Dinar Coons and you know, authors like that?
Yeah, I do. In fact, Stephen King was the inspiration for this book. I had finished reading the book It, and I'm from Wisconsin, and I'm from a creepy, creepy little town. In fact, this is an interesting note. Stephen King lived in my creepy little town of Deep Here. Yep. He and his mom and his brother. In fact, my dad actually sent me a photo of Stephen King's house where he lived for probably just only a few years, but he lived in this city of East Deep Here. And I thought, this is the creepiest town. I want to write about a creepy little town where there's a major disaster and it's something that you just have no idea what's going on. And being a Stephen King fan, that obviously it was going to wander into possibly supernatural horror elements.
Wow, that's trippy. You know what? Because remember, like, I remember the movie, and he goes, everybody floats down here. Like, he's creepy because he does.
Way creepy.
And to go to his town and his town being creepy, I wonder, do they have like a museum or anything on him?
You know, they really should have. His stay there was so brief that I honestly think that never happened. And I think my dad really found out randomly that because the house came up for sale, and one of the sale points was Stephen King lived here as a kid. And so it probably sold like that.
That's weird.
Then they relocated to Maine, and that's why all his stuff is in Maine. But it truly was, the novel was inspired. I am from Wisconsin, as I've already stated. And so that's why I wanted my city, my fictitious village, to be there, because the novel also, what I'm doing is, in the year it takes place, is I am gathering a collection of notorious Wisconsin serial killers who were actually all alive at the time that this book was written. This book takes place in '91, and I wanted to tie in a lot of Wisconsin serial killer lore in which these people were still alive.
Okay, you do get into that, Don. And you know what? The one thing is like when you go back to 91, I mean, we didn't even, it's like when you think about serial killers at that time frame, right? And now
Yeah.
what's going on, and now like the internet, now, you even watch like Law and Order, and there'll be like serial killers who kill people on Facebook, and you can watch it, and that really does happen, and all kinds of stuff like that. But I find it very weird when you go back then. I think they could get away with a lot more because we didn't have like all the technology that we have now. So
In
they could
fact, yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, I agree. In fact, honestly, a first draft of this novel was taking place in the present, and a brother-in-law of mine, Tom Kelleher, who reads my early work, said, "Man, with Instagram, Facebook, the World Wide Web, this couldn't happen. Like the story technically couldn't happen now because I needed a village so off the grid that all kinds of weird stuff can happen there, but they can remain anonymous." And so actually what I did was I looked up when the World Wide Web was launched. It was launched in like August of 91. And my novel also ties in Bastille Days, which takes place July 14th every year. And so I thought, okay, I'll do July 14th, 91. We're a month before the launching of the World Wide Web. The world is still in the dark. You can't, pagers were technology. If you wanted to immediately get in touch with anybody, landlines. I don't know how old you are, but I remember that. I in the year that this book was written, I was 19 or 20 years old.
Oh, yeah, we're close. I graduated high school in 91.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you remember we had landlines.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
one
and
long
pagers.
stretched out phone cord that
Pagers.
you could.
If you were
Uh-huh.
in the medical industry, or if you were a drug dealer, you had a pager.
Yep. In fact, in this case, the Brown County Police, the Brown County Sheriff's Department, I use prominently. My dad worked there, so my father's in this book as a cameo, as a captain for these detectives. And I just remember as a kid, I'd be with my dad, we'd be golfing, his pager would go off, and sorry, Brian, gotta go. That's how they would contact him, and there'd be some crazy guy with a deer rifle holed up, holding his family hostage on Thanksgiving.
And not
I mean,
and not streaming it on Facebook,
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
And they're having no way to, because with the modern communications technology that we have now, I mean, you can't do anything. 3 minutes later, it's on Instagram,
Exactly.
or less, 3 seconds. So, so I kind of wanted it to be a period piece in which, using all that old technology, pagers, car phones, CDs, and also it's a tribute to the serial killers in Wisconsin, and meanwhile all wrapped up in like the idea, it's like the Twilight Zone. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, the Twilight Zone. Yeah, because it's almost got like, I don't know why the Mothman, and now the Mothman wasn't in Wisconsin, but there's like the Mothman thing just kind of, I don't know, vibe to me. I can't even explain it, but the Mothman just comes to mind. And now, like, I have songs picked out for you, and I've got now my song list is growing as we talk. I've got a Mothman song I could have played. But yeah,
that's awesome.
Why does the Mothman? Why do I even think that? Because it's just one of those supernatural weird things, and I think that's where horror has that supernatural thing. Like, how far can you go? And as you're writing this, do you get into that zone of like, how far can I push the reader? Like, how creative can I be?
Yeah. In fact, initially, I wanted it to be a real tangible explanation for this happening. Like, the well water got poisoned, or I wanted there to be like just a normal reason for this event to occur. But the deeper I delved into it, I was like, no, this has to go in a supernatural route. And since it did, I took that as far as I could. So anyone who really enjoys, like Peter Straub, he wrote Ghost Story and oh gosh, one of his best ones, Peter Straub. Oh, I'm sorry if I'm blanking on that. Shadowland. He wrote a book called Shadowland. And another reference, Peter Straub is from Milwaukee. He's another horror writer who has collaborated with Stephen King. And he too takes you to these fantastic situations within the realm of normal situations, and takes it so far you're like, what the heck is going on? And so my idea was for this to get gradually weirder and weirder and weirder until like my intention for the ending is just to blow people's minds, like to be like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, because you just gotta like, oh, and that's the beauty about creative. You could just kind of come up with things that other people may not have thought of. Now, knowing Wisconsin, did you go back there? And because we just came through East Texas, we were just out there because Nancy and I travel full time on our Love Your Parks tour. We go to parks and historic sites and all of that. And we just drove through East Texas, and
wow.
we went to that's where the Columbia shuttle exploded, and so.
Oh wow!
So we went to the museum there, in this little tiny town, and you're driving through the forest where they found the remains, and I was talking to this young girl running the museum, and she was saying how the people, and this is a tiny town, how the people blocked the people coming in, and only let their police people be there for a little bit, and how they just kind of blocked everybody out, this tiny town. And while we were there and then driving back through the forest, there's just this element of weird. Like, you know what I mean? It's a very tragic thing, and so I'm not making light of that at all, but there was just this idea of this town and this tragedy. And then now we get to talk with you about the same kind of thing, but there's an element of, I don't know. Did you go back? Did you, get that kind of feeling?
I have a friend who lives up in the area where I put the village. In fact, a good friend of mine from high school who knows that area. He hunts up there. He's got a cabin up there. And so I had to make up a county, and I put the city right where there is actually a city. I won't name the name so they don't come after me. But I named the county. I renamed the county that the city is in, and it's not as remote as I make it out to be in the book, because it's on the border of Upper Michigan. I have it that it's surrounded by a national forest that I made up, so that it is extremely remote. But the idea is exactly kind of what you said. No one is allowed in. If you don't belong there, you're not allowed there.
It's creepy.
And that's what that's what the area, other towns in the area, kind of like, we just don't go around there. They keep to themselves, and we don't know why.
Oh, man.
And the idea is why. I mean, that's what I explore through the whole book, is two detectives having zero clues and just having to finally go there and see what's there. And that's where the book really gets to go way off into the stratosphere of fantasy and horror, where for the initial part of the book, the first half is like a detective. They're interviewing people, they're talking to the survivors, and as these weird elements start building up. But what you described in regarding to East Texas is the vibe.
Yeah.
That and northern Wisconsin is really creepy if you don't know it. I mean, there's just these tiny, blink your eye, and you just pass through it. You didn't even know you went through it.
Oh,
and people that'll be staring at you if you're getting gas, like, who's that? We don't recognize them.
Oh, cool.
creepy guy in overalls.
See, I want to go photograph them all, and then they'll, shoot you. That's the thing, as we travel, we do a lot of small towns. You want to get out and photograph people because sometimes you don't see this anymore. We just came through Missouri, and
Oh boy.
it was just before St. Louis, and we were coming through Kansas, and I went in to go get a sandwich because at a little deli store thing, and I walked in this little grocery store because they said they have a lunch counter thing, and I walked in, and it was like like a little, I called them cafes growing up, like a tiny, like a bodega, little tiny shop, a little mini
Sure.
grocery store. I go in there, and it is like from the 40s and the 50s, around that era. I
Yeah.
mean, and the
Yeah.
and the people in there were like, I felt like I walked into a vortex, like a time warp. And even they're like, no, that's a good looking sandwich, little lady. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a trip. And
Yeah.
they're like, it was bizarre, but it was super cool. It was like the highlight of my drive was this little grocery store in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, this is wild. Is this real?
Yeah.
And there's
When
a
I was
Cadillac outside of it, an old Cadillac. It was cool. It was
yeah,
fun.
you get into those rural parts, and as a younger man, I traveled around as a musician,
All right.
and I wore long hair. I wore extravagantly stupid-looking clothes, and I was bold enough to go into these little towns. And boy, I mean, if you look strange, you really want to try to avoid those places, or just adapt to their local customs very quickly, or just get in the car and leave. Just
So
get your gas and go.
you
I
toured as a
I I was
musician. That's awesome.
I grunge was my scene,
All
and in
right.
fact, unfortunately for Amber Hollow, grunge had not broke yet. The time that I had to place this book in is right before Kurt Cobain and Nirvana came out with Nevermind.
Oh, wow.
So music referenced in the book was still the hair metal bands, unfortunately, but also the R&B that was coming up at the time, and Vogue, stuff like that.
Oh,
And
my gosh.
because I really wanted grunge in there because that was my era.
Yeah, yeah.
And because I had to travel through North Carolina. I was going to Raleigh, North Carolina to audition for a band, and I had to stop I don't know, just right off the highway. I was almost out of gas. I swear to God, the whole crew from Deliverance was just sitting there. I could hear the banjo ding, 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 and I'm like getting gas. They're staring at me. I'm staring at them, and I'm like, as soon as I pay, I got like practically peeling out of there.
Wow.
Because
No.
they're
Well,
all just looking at me,
that's
looking
so
like,
funny.
oh.
Well, some parts of Florida are like that. There's it's out in the Panhandle, and Nancy went with a friend of hers. They went to go kayaking, amongst the gators and stuff. Why not? And
Right?
because we're weird. But anyway, she went, and then we went there later, and like a few months later, so I could go and experience this. And there's this little shack on the river where you can rent the canoes and kayaks, and they're like, we don't rent no canoes to females. And and so they look at each other, and there's this little shack bar thing. Well, Nancy and I went back there, and there's picking and a grinning music at 4, and then they had this big jar of like I would call them trotters. I don't know, from like pickled pig's feet things, and
Oh, yeah. Ooh,
yeah,
nasty.
yeah. So, but we went in there and we stayed, and the music never happened. But they were like, what are these women doing at the bar? And we've been to places like that up in the redwoods too, where you, as a woman walking in, you sit down at the bar, the two of us, they look at you, and I remember that sign on the wall going, if you like toilet paper, you better be nice to us here in logging country. And
Wow.
we're like, do we stay here? But there's,
Uh-huh.
I like those vibes, and I think it's really cool to just kind of like, it always happens. People always ask, well, what are you doing? And who are you? What are you doing in my town? There's been that creepy thing. We went, when we were in South Africa, we did a tour, and we went into this township, drove in, and then all of a sudden, someone just closed a gate behind us, and we were in this little village, and they closed a gate on us. So when
Wow,
we
like you
turned
were
around,
trapped in?
yeah, so we turned around, and there were a bunch of little kids. So I threw coins and candy, and while they went and jumped for that, I opened the gate and we ran out or drove out. Anyways, yeah, just but that feeling, and you have that small town feeling, that vibe that you're talking about. Like anything absolutely bizarre can happen. Like, the day of the Triffids kind of thing could happen in here. You know,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, that mass
And I
hysteria.
Yeah, in fact, that's funny you would say mass hysteria because the initial idea beyond wanting this creepy town was I wanted it to maybe be like an episode of mass hysteria. And
Yeah.
so that prompted me to look up episodes of mass hysteria. And there's one, I can't say it because it'll totally spoiler alert the book, but there's one in history centuries ago that did kind of inspire this.
Oh wow.
And now if you go and Google, you might, you'll go, oh, I know what he's talking about. But that was an initial idea. I'm sorry, I don't mean to get stuck on that. But
Yeah.
I wanted it to seem like what this mass hysteria, everybody dies. What the hell happened?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's chemical explosions at plants in these tiny towns. They put them in these tiny towns, and they're like store-bought towns, and that's part of the thing. That's when we go to little towns, if they're owned by the mine at that point, where you're basically like sharecroppers in an industry, in a factory, in a way, where
Right.
the store town, and you go in, and they're still there in this country. A lot of them went dormant, but they put these big chemical plants and everything right in these little towns, and these things do happen, and people do get sick, and there's mass hysteria that happens all the time. And as we take away all our environmental protections, we may have more and more of these weird
Right.
incidences happening. I'm just saying, you could be doing a
Right.
series. But what led you to go into like the horror fantasy? Because I know you've written other books as well. Because they weren't fantasy horror, were they?
My first book was actually an environmental horror novel
Oh
called
wow,
The
see?
Geyer Mission, and it was about the Great Trash Patch out in the Pacific that you probably heard of.
Mm-hmm.
It's a island of garbage. It's not really an island, but a gyre is a slow moving counterclockwise or clockwise depending on which hemisphere it's in body of water, and it's sucking in the ocean's garbage. And in a nutshell, it turned into a giant island full of mutants, and I had some people get stuck there, and it was like they had to survive.
Can you put politicians in there?
I did. In fact, I prominently featured a phony California governor who was the sleaziest. I mean, like when he died, I made sure that everybody was like, yes.
Oh, I love this.
I made him super sleazy, and he didn't like any environmental protection laws, and he didn't want to even be there. He was like, but you're the governor, you have to go.
that is, yeah, you make people happy with it. Well, how hard is it to write about a sleazy politician? The examples
that was so easy.
I know, that's the
itself.
easiest part. But I know, but then you've got that, people, I think right now people want to kill most politicians at this point. It's right. Out of control.
In fact, actually, by villain, everybody the survivors that are being interviewed are all blaming the mayor of this town, of this village, Amber Hollow. They're saying it's the mayor's fault. So I do have it almost politically based. They're all blaming the mayor. Each one has a different story, though. That he got hooked. Oh, I don't want to say it. I don't want to give anything away, but everybody, the person they are blaming is the mayor of the town.
It's the Lord of the Flies.
And so, yeah. So like I do like to deal with corruption like at its highest level, and then kind of take it from there. But that said, I do with Amber Hollow, I do keep my own political beliefs out of it. I leave them ambiguous enough that any intelligent reader will go, oh yeah, I know what he's talking about. But I'm not doing it in a way where I'd want to alienate anybody. It was like, oh, well, I'm not going to read this because, fill in the blank here. There's no parties, no affiliations, anything like that. Yeah. But it is clear. And I'm going to add this only because this has been a part that I have been talking about, that this book was also partially inspired by the hashtag Me Too movement, in that, and it came organically. It wasn't something I actually planned, but it fit into the storyline of people subjected to abuse because of somebody who is in a higher position of power over them. And there's a review out from Clarion that kind of does spell it out, saying that the vengeance that is the person who gets their revenge in the end, you'll be really satisfied in regards to. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, you see, it gets down to, I think what's cool about, these kinds of stories is you do get down to, like when you bring up revenge, you're going right to our primal emotions as human beings, and when you bring in things like the Me Too movement or politicians, mayors, all that kind of stuff, drama, hysteria, you get right into that quick of raw, the raw human emotion, that raw down, that stuff that we're not revengeful. We're not like that. Oh, yes, we are. Human beings are. And human beings get mean and evil and, all of that good stuff. And so when you get into that, you're tapping into that side that some people thrive on and some people try to hide. But we all have that dose in there,
Yeah. In fact, in all my books, this one, the least, I always do, actually, I shouldn't say the least, because I said the hashtag Me Too. I always have something that is relevant. Like the Geyer mission, the one I told you about, the Island of Garbage, that was on the front page of the San Diego newspaper, Island of Garbage. And I'm like, all right, let's strand people there. And then I did a novel called Glitch in the Machine, where healthcare was a huge thing. And so that was actually a sci-fi dystopian healthcare novel. I always am going for something you just read in the paper, and then I incorporate it into some fantastic situation.
Wow.
And where there are parallels, and what I strive to do is correct the situation if I can throughout the course of the book, to give people kind of like, all right, like, I mean, this is not, I can't say it's a spoiler alert. If anyone were to read the review that Clarion did of the book, the last line was, and the revenge was so satisfying.
Yeah.
and I was like, all right, because that was the goal.
A giant revenge burger.
Right. In fact, and not to my writing name, Edgar Swamp, I did not lift that from Edgar Allan Poe. That I just wanted to, and I say that because Edgar Allan Poe, if you read most of his stories, they are revenge stories. If you really delve into his work, he
is one of the darkest in the world. Like he's dark, but I have to tell you this, if you like Poe, Edgar Allan Poe, right? I'm going to find this for you right now. I'm just quickly running. Because Vincent Price. Oh gosh, I got to get this. This is so cool. Okay, so 5 hours of Edgar Allan Poe stories are read by Vincent Price and Basil Rathbone.
Wow.
So it's out.
That would be really
there.
Cool.
I'll send you the link to this. I will email this.
Oh, please.
Because this is just, it's sweet, man. It's super sweet.
I bet.
Now I know you're into music. Now, did Larkin Poe, have you watched any of their performances, heard their music, the Blues Sisters?
Which band?
Larkin Poe.
I'm not familiar with them.
Oh, got to check them out. We just saw them at a blues festival up in Greeley, Colorado. Awesome. These two sisters.
I will have to check that out.
They rock. They just, this slide guitar and all that, just amazing, right? So I was looking them up and I'm like, what is up with their name? turns out they're the great granddaughters of Edgar Allan Poe. I'm like, no.
Wow. Oh, look, see, now I'm sold. Yeah, I will be Googling that
But they're not
instantly.
dark, man. They're not dark. But then I'm like looking at his picture right now, and I'm going, well, I was photographing him and everything, and I'm like, the one kind of has that look. So
Right?
so I'll send you some links on all of that. But I always love to play music for our guests, and I've got like a total like playlist brewing. Are you going to have a playlist for the book for Amber Hollow?
In regard to
Just
what?
songs. Like a playlist of music. Like a lot of authors go and they create a playlist of songs that go with the book, with their story.
I guess I would base it on the music that's in the book.
Yeah.
And so bands that I mentioned in the book to be with the year 91 are Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, Faith No More. Those were rock bands that were famous at the time. So yeah, actually, I actually would. But I also, because one of my lead characters is into the hip hop and R&B, and so like there'd be an En Vogue song in there.
That's a trip, though.
What's funny is I actually don't know the R&B as well. I didn't really like that. I was into when that hair metal was going on. I was waiting for grunge. Like when grunge came out, I was like, "Oh, thank you, God!
Thank God, yeah.
Thanks, Kurt Cobain. You just saved us."
I know.
And unfortunately,
and you could have dirty hair too.
And you know what's funny? When grunge came around, I was already dressing like that.
See, I'm with you on that. I didn't like. It was so weird because I grew up, listening to my mom's music, like on the Doors and things like that.
I love those. Yeah, all that stuff.
I love all that stuff, and then all of a sudden, there's like bubblegum stuff, like from the '80s. And I remember living in England when punk rock came out, and walking around punks and just it was awesome. I loved the punk era, and then here comes
Me too.
Madonna and bebop. Sorry, everybody, but no. Stop
it.
Just turn it off. Stop it.
It got so lame. And it seemed that, go ahead, sorry.
I was just thinking back to some of the places, like we'd go out and party at night, and, and just the music. I just can remember some of the imboppy, ting-tong, poppycock.
Oh, yeah. Just crap, bubblegum. I mean, there was these dry bars in Green Bay where you'd go to pick up girls, and I couldn't stand the music.
Yeah.
I would be like out in the parking lot going, "Oh man, I want to go in there, but I don't want to go and listen to that crap and dance."
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, it was okay in the early '80s because it was like it was the metal before it got bad. It was like it was the leather before they started wearing lace, and got all cheesy. And then the '80s came in and took everybody over with "Come On, Eileen" and all that kind of crap.
Yep.
And then so like honestly, if I kind of wish grunge had been able to have been used in Amber Hollow, because
it had a good vibe to it.
I would have loved to have been able to incorporate that into this because it is a '90s period piece. But unfortunately, the world didn't know it yet.
Exactly.
Underground people did. In the summer of '91, I was listening to weird bands, but no one else. It was all college radio stuff.
Well,
the radio was...
Yeah. There was, like Pink Floyd was my thing at that time. That was high on the list. Oh, yeah. Floyd was like, I don't know. On my list
today. I love Pink Floyd.
It was like, and I remember wars with friends going, now, how people do Eric Clapton versus Jimi Hendrix. And I'm like, there's no, Jimi Hendrix will always win. Sorry.
Always.
Always win,
hands
right?
down.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I remember it was at one point Dire Straits versus Pink Floyd. And I'm like, oh, man. But then Pink Floyd is always going to kick your butt. They're always going to do it.
Every time.
I know.
I agree.
But I love Mark Knopfler. But one thing I do want to tell audiences, I truly believe if you are into Twin Peaks, and I mean the original Twin Peaks, you are going to love Amber Hollow. Just going to say that.
Awesome.
Don't
That's
you think?
cool. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
I do, and I did really, and not only Twin Peaks, but David Lynch in particular,
Oh man,
his films.
he's the
Yeah,
best, man. See
he's
now,
the blueprint for oddities.
him and David Lynch and David Byrne, the two of them together
Yep,
are like an
yep.
interesting combo. That's what happens uh, when you start meditating. That's it. You
That's
know.
really cool that you would bring that up because, yeah, I mean, I did want the Twin Peaks isolated vibe, you know,
Yeah,
and
that's
where people you can't really get much information out of them, you know.
and you
The
got cheese
investigators are really
curds,
being,
cheese curds
yep.
instead of pie. There you go.
It's cheese curds instead of pie.
I
In
love
fact,
it.
what's kind of funny is I don't know how. It's just because I drink a lot of coffee. Coffee is mentioned a lot in here, and I'm working with a company, JKS Communications,
Yeah, yeah,
and
we
so
love
they're
them.
actually they've been absolutely wonderful, and they've actually got some coffee related stuff they're going to pitch for me. I mean that was cool that they noticed Jennifer Vance, who I'm working with. She noticed all the coffee references, and
That's awesome.
coffee is just what fuels my day, you know. So somehow it ends up like for example, Stephen King was a smoker, and all his characters smoked, you know.
So
And
yeah,
so sometimes, you know, these writers they incorporate what they're doing into their characters. And since I drank a lot of coffee while I was writing this, my characters were too.
I love that. I love it. I love it. And JKS Communications, got to give them a shout out. They've assigned us to a story a story series as we travel the country, and it is to go find places. That's why I was asking you more and more about Stephen King's house, places like literary hotspots. And I can't believe the places and the people. It's just ever since then, it's like you open your eyes to a different way of travel. We've been like, there's a
Mm,
waterfall for Helen Hunt Jackson, who wrote Ramona, which is based out near you, in
right.
Temecula, and Ramona, the town Ramona, is named
Yep.
after her story. And then like Michener, when we were up in Greeley, Colorado, he taught up there, and Centennial was based on this area we're in. And we went up to Steinbeck's family house. I mean, all kinds of it's kind of
Wow.
crazy how these little places. And then we found all kinds of odd there was a humorist that used to have a newspaper here, and and it was just on the side of a road was his grave. And he had driven to LA, and he finally made a movie deal, and he had a tooth infection and died. And that was that.
Oh,
And he
wow.
changed his name, and he had all these weird characters, and he was just a hysterical, quirky dude. And so I have to write something about him because there's just nothing about his life as much out there. And I'm just like, wow, look at this. So JKS Communications, you guys rock for putting us on this story tour, because I'm finding so many stories. I'm like in trouble. We're going to create a literary
You
map.
are literally lucky. In fact, on that made me like look around in the Wisconsin area for this and try to find as far as serial killers and to try to just kind of get them in there. And there's one that I mentioned who actually wasn't a serial killer, but just a guy who murdered his entire family with a deer rifle and then put him in the family car and set the car on fire.
Wow.
Like something you never would have even heard of before. And it just coincidentally happened within the time frame of my book. And I'm like, whoa, there's a great find. I get to toss him in there too, you know?
Wow.
So
Wow.
I don't want to mention, if anybody knows their serial killer lore, they know that the date, July 23rd, 1991 is a very significant one. I won't say why, but if you Google it, you'll go, oh, that's why.
Okay. See, this
Because
is cool.
it's supposed to be kind of a surprise, but
Man, I love this. Well, your song today is called X-Files. Because
awesome,
it has that intro in it that just this is and go figure, I didn't even think about this until we were talking. This songwriter and singer is Peggy James, and oh man, she's an awesome singer, and she's in Milwaukee. So there you go.
Oh
So
my God, that is so cool.
yeah,
In fact, I'm going to Milwaukee this week.
oh man.
I'm flying out there to visit my family and friends.
Oh, really cool. Because have you heard the band Locate Your Lips?
I can't say that I have.
There is a band that came out of I don't know what's going on in Milwaukee, but I really, really want to go. Number one, cheese sounds good. Cheese, curds, beer, the beer scene.
Oh, they're the best.
But
they're
the music scene, we have interviewed so many musicians out of Milwaukee. And just
it's
Wisconsin.
a great music town. That
Man.
is, in fact, where I did a lot of my music, where I can honestly say I was most accepted, because I tried Chicago and Austin, and they're really tough markets. And Milwaukee, I was able to find a niche there. And the people are so nice, and they're helpful.
Oh,
they're really talented, but they're not super cutthroat, because they're like, well, it's Milwaukee, you know?
Yeah.
Shamil Shamassel, Haas and Reffer Incorporated.
No,
You know?
fantastic music coming out of there. So I want to go up there. Like, there's Sam Lawness. I don't know if you've heard of. He was with the Bodines.
Oh, I got a story about him. Oh,
wow.
Sammy Lamas. I know him. He was on the scene with the Bodines.
Yeah.
And I was in bands, and I was always jealous of him, because he always wore these great suits, and he always had not one, two hot girls on each arm. And I was always by myself, looking all grungy and jealous. And I was backstage at a Collective Soul concert when I ran into a woman who I already knew, who I'd always had a crush on. And Sammy witnessed me making out with her. And this is so cool. He high-fived me.
Man.
I looked at him. He gave me the nod. He had, as usually, had the two hot babes on each arm. And he gave me the nod like, you're cool, man. Got a high five from him.
That's funny, man. Yeah, he's got a great news, 2 new albums. The Return of the Goya.
Really?
Yeah,
I'll
awesome.
have to check that out.
I'll send you the links.
He's a really, really nice guy.
Hell of a songwriter.
I feel bad, because when I was younger, I was always harassing him because I was jealous. And that's how he got to know me. Oh, here comes that guy. He's going to say something stupid to me. But then we got to end it on such a high note. The only down note, though, was it turned out the girl I kissed, well, she was married.
Oh, well, that happens once in a while. Well done.
Right?
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done. Normally it's the other way around, but you go, man. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us here. Everyone, edgarswamp.com is a website to go to. The book is Amber Hollow. It is out now. Don't forget, Big Blend Radio airs Sunday through Friday. And you can see the whole list of shows of when the episodes go live and all the different venues, from iTunes to TuneIn to YouTube, Facebook, all those places. Just go to bigblendradio.com. Thanks so much, Edgar. And here it is, everyone, X-Files by Peggy James. You can hear her interview. Just go to blendradioandtv.com, and you also find her on Facebook. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Nail down your heart, board up your senses or get blown apart. The trees are restless and you don't know why. You can feel it moving as it passes you by. Just put it in your shield your eyes. Better look within you, don't look outside. There's something out there and you don't know what it is. It's better not knowing than if you did. Just put it in your eyes. watching.